to week 5 in our devotion series here with I Need to Change. Here we are with day 1, week 5. Yesterday, if you weren't at church, I talked a lot about the reality of hell and how there were some realities that we have to face. A lot of people that think they're Christians aren't Christians. And I shared how narrow is the gate to heaven, but wide is the road to hell. And talks about how many who think they are Christians will never see the kingdom of heaven because they've missed one thing: the intimate relationship with Christ. I encourage people not to get wrapped up and lost in the things they do for God, but to get wrapped up in the relationship that they have with God. And so today we're going to jump in with a new devotion here, talking about some great people that chose God over people. So check this out. Here we go. You ever notice there's something unrivaled about stepping out onto the field or a court to the cheer of thousands of fans? You know, right here behind me, I'm standing at Jung Stadium. I can remember when I would run out of the locker room and bust through the sign to the cheers of literally thousands of people in these stands. It was a great feeling. There's something exhilarating about standing on a stage and taking a bow in front of a standing ovation. I used to do musicals when I was in high school. Yes, I did musicals. But there was something great about at the end of that show when you would go out and you would take that bow and you knew that somebody was cheering for you. It's exhilarating. It's uplifting. We love a pat on the back, but sometimes we have to choose who we want to pat us on the back. Sometimes we have to be disapproved by one group to be approved by another. In Galatians 1:10, Paul is talking here and he says, obviously, I'm not trying to be a people pleaser. No, I'm trying to please God. If I were still trying to please people, I would not be Christ's servant. There are times we have to choose between the approval of men and the approval of God. We might have to give up a standing ovation in order to follow God. We might have to forego a pat on the back to be obedient to God. There are times that we'll have to choose the more difficult road if we're going to follow Him. The Apostle Paul wrote to the Galatian church with some difficult words. He had to choose between the approval of the church and the approval of God. He chose the approval of God and said what had to be said. He stood up for the real thing. He was not the first to make this decision, though. Do you remember the account of Daniel 3 of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, where they were asked to bow down to a 90-foot tall statue that was created by a man, and anyone that would not bow down would be thrown into a fiery furnace. And as everybody bowed down to the cue of musical instruments, they stood because they would bow down to no man, but to God and God alone. They were told to bow down to this idol, be thrown into a furnace, and they chose the approval of God and literally withstood through fire. Noah was mocked for building an ark. Moses was laughed off by Pharaoh when he told him to let the Israelites go free. Elijah was despised by the king for speaking the truth. Daniel was thrown into the lion's den for following God instead of the king. John the Baptist was beheaded for not approving the king's relationship. There are times that the approval of men and the approval of God merge. There will be times when these two things link up, where they match up. But when you reach a fork in the road where you have to choose between man and God, which direction will you choose? What is a decision that you're facing today where you might have to choose between God and the approval of men? What are the positives and negatives to both choices that you could make? I encourage you today, figure out whom you will serve. Will it be the approval of man, or will it be the approval of God, who promises to always be faithful? I can promise you, when you go with God, you'll never lose. You may not be popular, but you'll never lose. God bless. I'll see you tomorrow.